What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Clutch Talk, episode 14 today, and a little bit different. Like I said in past videos, we're going to continue to transition into ranking position groups, top players at positions, things like that, bold predictions, things like that. And we're going to start today by ranking who I think will be the top 10 offensive lines in college football this upcoming season. If you're new to the channel and like the content, please subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel out a lot. And yeah, we're going to get started here. Again, continuing with our season previews in the next video, it'll be Florida and Louisville. We'll be breaking down those teams and then continuing on with breaking position groups. I'm looking at wide receiver rooms, potentially rating those in the next video, but we'll get into that later. In the meantime, let's get after ranking these top 10 offensive lines in college football this upcoming season. I'm going to start at number 10, work my way up to 1. Number 10, I got the Utah Utes. I'm out of the Big 12. They are returning a lot. All 5 starters are back along that offensive line. Left tackle Caleb Lomu is the headliner, 99% of the snaps in A grade. He's only a sophomore. And Spencer Fano is projected first-round pick, 99% of the snaps. He had an A-plus grade according to PFF as a senior. As a unit last year, though, they weren't all that amazing. Gave about 2 sacks a game, which is 71st. Only 3.9 yards a rush was 93rd, and 130 rushing yards per game at 98th. Center Jaron Kump, though, played every single snap last year at a B-plus grade. He's a senior. 4 seniors along that offensive line, a very experienced group of Kyle Whittingham. And I think they're going to be really, really good this year. And they're going to have a really dynamic quarterback in Darian Dampier, who ran for 1,100 yards at his previous stop. Now that quarterback, I think they're going to lean on that offensive line. And look, Utah did not have a good year last year, right? They were 5-7, didn't make a bowl game under Kyle Whittingham. Very unusual. The offensive line, like I said, numbers-wise and stuff, they weren't that amazing, but all of them had great PFF grades. All of them are very experienced. And again, this is probably one of the most experienced and talented, honestly, offensive lines Kyle Whittingham's had. He's had some pretty good offensive lines. So I think this offensive line could be really good. I think they're going to lean on the run game more than they did last year, and I think they're going to be more dynamic. I expect that 3.9 yard per rushing to not be a thing anymore at Utah under Kyle Whittingham. That's not the usual Utah that it was last year. I think things will change. I think returning that much production is going to help them. I think Utah's going to be a top 10 offensive line at number 10. If you're wondering how I rank these, by the way, I look at experience, who played a lot of snaps last year, and the PFF grades, and then rushing statistics as well last year, yards per rush and sacks allowed. But Utah is clocked at number 10. Number 9, I'm going to go with the Clemson Tigers out of the ACC. Another group returning a lot. Ryan Lithicum, 100% of the snaps, B grade. He's a senior. Blake Miller is really the star along that offensive line. He had A- grade last year. He's a senior as well. All upperclassmen along that offensive line. The youngest one's a junior in Harris Sewell. 45% of the snaps, B- grade. Walker Parks only had a C- grade last year, but he had a very good year the year before. He's a graduate student, he's played a lot of football, very experienced. I think they're going to lean along that right side of the offensive line this year. 57 sacks allowed last year at 1.79, 173.4 rushing yards per game, which is 48th in the country, and then 5.13 yards per rush was 23rd. This was a Clemson team that didn't necessarily run the ball last year, but when they did, they were successful at 5.1 yards per rush. I expect it to be the same. Now, they don't have Phil Maffa. There's no Will Shipley, Travis Etienne. They have Jay Haynes, who's going to be running back. Very inexperienced. Last year didn't play a whole lot. They expect a lot out of him, though, and I think this is a team that's going to rely on that pass game just because, you have Cade Klubnik in one of the top wide receiver rooms in the country. But I think they're going to need a little bit of balance. I think they can provide that. I think the offensive lines can provide that. And I think they're going to do a really good job protecting Cade Klubnik this year, making him look even better by protecting him in the pocket. Very high on Clemson's offensive line this year. Moving on to number 8, I got the Oregon Ducks out of the Big Ten. A heavily transferred and fused offensive line. So 3 of the 5 starters on the offensive line are transfers, including Isaiah World from Nevada. 51% of the snaps, a B-plus grade. He's a senior. Was a 5-star transfer kit, a really highly rated transfer. And then Emmanuel Pregnon, 56% of the snaps, a B-plus grade. He's a graduate student. And then Iapani Lolaulu, 87% of the snaps, A- grade as a junior. Matthew Bedford's extremely he got hurt last year, so he only played 1% of the snaps. C+ grade, didn't have that good of a year last year even before he got hurt. but he's been in the program for a very long time, and he's now the starting right guard. Then Alex Harkey, who was really good. He only got 52% of the snaps. He also struggled to stay on the field, but at A-plus grade, he's a senior, a very experienced offensive line. Again, you got 2 graduates on the guard position and then 2 senior tackles. If you look at the numbers, though, 1.5 sacks allowed, which is 40th, 157.9 rushing yards per game, which is good for 72nd. And they were 63rd in yards per rush at 4.4. Not amazing numbers-wise, but I think, again, the transfers they brought in is going to bolster this offensive line. I think the offensive line was around top 20 last year. They weren't top 10. I think with the transfers they brought in and the added experience to that offensive line, I think they're going to be a top 10 group this year in 2025. Moving on to number 7. I got my first SEC team on here, and that is the Alabama Crimson Tide, coming in at number 7. They are headlined by, obviously, projected top 15 draft pick left tackle Caden Proctor. 76% of the snaps, A- grade. He's a junior. He's had a little bit of drama with transferring in and out and stuff, but he's a very good tackle. Gino Vandemark, 43% of the snaps, B- grade. He's going to be at left guard. Parker Brailsford, one of the top-end centers in college football, had a B-plus grade, played 94% of the snaps. He's played a lot of football. The question for me is going to be at right tackle with Wilker Formby. He played 34% of snaps. He's only a sophomore and had a C- grade last year. I think that right tackle position is the only reason I don't have Alabama in top 5. If it wasn't for the question mark at right tackle, I'm not saying Wilker Formby is going to be bad, but I think if it was more proven position, I think Alabama could be top 5. Last year, that 1.85 sacks allowed, which is good for 61st, 173 rushing yards per game, and 4.6 yards per rush. Another team that kind of struggled to run the ball, more so of a lack of willingness to run the football system-wise. I think they're going to lean more on this offensive line this year because I think Alabama needs to be a complementary football team this year if they want to be better than what they were last year. So I think you're going to see Jam Miller and other guys get more touches running the football. Even though there is no Jalen Miller to run the football, I think they're going to be more complementary and balanced in terms of running with the tailbacks and stuff. I think they're going to be protecting Ty Simpson more because I think it's going to be more of a focal point from the coaching staff. So we have to protect Ty Simpson, give him a clean pocket where he doesn't have to move with his legs a whole lot. So Alabama's coming in at number 7. Number 6, I'm going with the Miami Hurricanes. They protected Cam Ward fantastically last year, did a really good job giving him a clean pocket to work with. And they're headlined by Francis Mauigoa, who's a really, really good right tackle, A- grade, 85% of the snaps, a junior. They did replace their center with James Brockermeyer, who started at TCU last year, 50% of the snaps, A- grade. He's also a senior, very experienced group up front with 3 seniors, 2 juniors. Markel Bell had a B- grade at left tackle. He's going to get an expected jump. And Anez Cooper played every snap last year, had a B grade as a senior as well. He's expected to have another good year. The main stat that poked out to me for Miami was they ran the ball for 5.7 yards per rush. I think that's important because with Carson Beck, I think you also need to play some complementary football to where he's not relied on for every snap like he was at Georgia last year. That's kind of what happened with Carson Beck last year. Is he was expected to do all this and try to be a hero, and it fell on him. I think you need to have the ability to have balance, kind of like Alabama does. And clearly Miami can show they can do that with that offensive line. They're returning 4 starters of a team that averaged almost 6 yards a carry on the ground. Really good. They're 31st in rush yards per game as well. 55th in sacks allowed. I think they'll probably stay the same, just to be honest. But if they can improve, that would be great. And Francis Mauigoa is an elite talent at right tackle. He headlines that group, and it's a very connected, experienced group. Number 5, this one probably not many people are expecting to be on here, but it's the Iowa Hawkeyes. Really, really good group last year. They were top 20 in every major offensive line statistic, I would say. I mean, rushing yards per game is a running back statistic, but it's also an offensive line statistic. They were top 30 in everything. 3 of the 5 starters had an A+ grade according to PFF. Now, 2 of them were very experienced. Logan Jones is, I think, the best center in college football. He played 98% of the snaps last year at A+ grade. He's a graduate student. And then you got Jennings Dunker, really good right tackle at A+ grade as well, 86% of the snaps as a senior. Bo Stevens is going to be anchoring that position at left guard, played 73% of snaps. The only reason I think Iowa honestly isn't top 3 is because they have put in a new right guard and a new left tackle. But with that being said, they're still top 5 because the new guys that are in, have A-plus grades, and Jack Dotzler and Cade Piper. So I think the offensive line is still going to be really good, and I think they're going to be an elite group, and they're going to rely on that physicality in order for Iowa's offense to be successful. They were 26th in sacks allowed, 24th in rush yards per game, and 25th in yards per rush. I think it's going to be the same. I think Iowa's offensive line is going to be really good. Again, they're going to have to rely on it in order to score points because we know Iowa. It's not going to be a 300-yard passing yards per game attack. But the offensive line overall is very good, and under Kirk Ferentz, they're always going to be physical at the point of attack and have a really good offensive line. I think it's going to be one of his better offensive lines this year. So they're coming in number 5. Number 4, another one I don't think people are expecting to see on here, but it's the Florida Gators. Another SEC team. Jake Slaughter and Austin Barber headline that group. They're 2 all-SEC offensive linemen. Jake Slaughter, again, probably the second best behind Logan Jones in college football. He also played 98% of snaps, had A-plus grade at center. He's a senior. 3 seniors, and then Bryce Lovett had 41% of the snaps, A- grade. He's a sophomore. Almost a borderline 5-star out of high school, though. Extremely talented. And then Kenna J. Harris, 75% of the snaps, B-plus grade as a junior. They were 43rd in sacks allowed, 67th in rush yards per game, and then 56th in yards per rush. Florida's offensive line is going to be a lot relied on this year. One, to protect DJ Lagway, because for those who we don't know, DJ Lagway's hurt right now. He's in a boot ahead of fall camp, so that's something that's being a question mark on the Florida program. But Jaden Ball was a freshman last year, super dynamic, and I think they're going to lean on Jaden Ball more this year and that run game as a whole to be very elite. And Billy Napier. Billy Napier wants to run the football, and I think with Jaden Ball and that offensive line this year, they could be really elite at it. I expect the 161 rush yards per game to go up to 190. I really do. The people they're returning, again, basically 5 productive offensive linemen last year. No inexperience really along that offensive line. And again, they're going to have to protect Lagway. I think they're going to do a good job at that. But I think the running game and how they're going to run the ball this year is why I think they'll be a top 5 offensive line this year. So that goes Florida. And now we're heading to our top 3. Again, if you're liking this video, please subscribe. And let's go to number 3. I think their best offensive line this year is going to be Penn State. The Penn State Nittany Lions. Drew Shelton, 89% of the snaps at left tackle last year. Has C- grade. Had a down year from when he had his junior year, but he's still very good and has played a lot of football. Cooper Cousins is really the only new piece. He has C- grade last year. He's a question mark. He's the only reason I don't have him 2 or 1. But Nick Dawkins had a really good year last year. Nolan Rucci had a really good year last year. And the Penn State offensive line overall had a good year last year. They were 23rd in sacks allowed, 17th rushing yards per game, and 17th in yards per rush. The PFF grades for this offensive line aren't going to stand out, but the experience and how many football games they played and how they performed last year, particularly running the football and protecting Drew Allar, I think is what's going to set them apart to be a top 3 offensive line this year. Because, yes, they have good running backs. Like Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen are great running backs. They're going to do good no matter who the offensive line is. But I think with this offensive line, it just makes them look that much better. And I think they'll stay around that 200 rushing yards per game. They're still going to be heavy running the football and super physical. And 23rd sacks allowed is a stat that didn't get talked about either. They protected Drew Allar really well, and I think they have to do it again because Drew Allar is really good with a clean pocket. And if you can give him a clean pocket, things are going to work out well, and I think they're going to do that again this year. So with that being said, I think Penn State will be the 3rd best offensive line and what will be one of the better offenses in college football this upcoming season. Number 2, I got Notre Dame. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They were really banged up along that offensive line last year. They get some of those pieces that got hurt back, and then on top of that, they got some guys who played a lot of snaps last year that were really, really good. Emil Wagner is the one that sticks out to me, 93% of the snaps last year, A grade, and it was a senior. Ashton Craig got hurt 3rd game of the year last year at 15% of the snaps, B- grade at center. He's back as what he was going to be the starter all last season. And then Anthony Knapp, 81% of the snaps, B- grade as a sophomore, so he had a really good freshman year last year. Billy Scroft, 66% of the snaps, B+ grade as a senior as well. Charles Jagasaw also got hurt early on in the year at 11% of the snaps, B+ grade. He was expected to have a big year as well, so they're returning 2 guys who missed a lot of snaps to injury last year. They were 19th in rush yards per game, 8th in yards per rush, and then 45th in sacks allowed. Jeremiah Love, right? He's the star of that Notre Dame offense. Everyone knows Jeremiah Love. He's, sleeper for the Heisman, all that stuff. They're going to do a really good job of creating gaps for him. And again, Marcus Freeman, there's Kirby Smart's going to have a good defense at Georgia. Lane Kiffin's going to have a good offense at Ole Miss. Lincoln Riley's going to have decent quarterback play. That, things like that. Like Nick Saban was always going to have good secondary guys when he was at Alabama. With Marcus Freeman, they're going to have an edge and personality where they have this chip on their shoulder, no matter how good or bad they are. And I think that offensive line will take the personality out, just like they did last year. And I expect those rushing numbers to be the same, and they're going to do everything they can to protect C.J. Carr, who's the freshman quarterback, taking over the spotlight at Notre Dame. And they're going to let Jeremiah Love shine by giving them gaps, and they're going to be physical as all get out. So I think this Notre Dame offensive line is going to be the second best. So that leaves us with number one, and I'm sure y'all are just dying to know who it is. I think the best offensive line in college football this season is going to be the Texas A&M Aggies. Probably one that some people wouldn't expect if you just look at who the top 25 teams in the country are. You wouldn't think A&M's number one. But I think they will have the best offensive line in 2025. They're returning all 5 starters, and all 5 starters were really good last year. Trey Zune, 91% of the snaps, A- grade. He's a senior. You got 4 seniors, you got a junior, and 4 of your 5 starters had an A- grade or better. And then the one guy who didn't have an A- grade, he had played 97% of the snaps. It's extremely, extremely experienced group. 55 sacks allowed, 26 in rush yards per game, 35 yards per rush. And that was not even including the numbers. If you look at the numbers of that offensive line, when Marcel Reed became the quarterback, things looked a lot better. And this is a team that's not going to be throwing the ball 30 times a game. They're going to be smash mouth. They're going to run it probably 40 to 50 times a game. I'm serious. Texas A&M will be a team that runs it 40 to 50 times a game, and that offensive line will shine because of it. I expect this offensive line to pound you down and wear you down over a course of a game. I think this Texas A&M offensive line is elite, experienced, and Mike Elko's personality is going to wear on this offensive line, and they're going to take on the personality of their head coach with that chip on their shoulder. An extremely talented group, and I think they will be the best offensive line in college football this season. What should be a really big year for the Aggies with a lot of retention. So that is my top 10 offensive line. Again, just to break it down, I got 10 Utah, 9 Clemson, 8 Oregon, 7 Alabama, 6 Miami, 5 Iowa, 4 Florida, 3 Penn State, number 2 Notre Dame, and the best offensive line I think will be the Texas A&M Aggies. With that being said, that'll wrap up our video of breaking down our top 10 offensive lines. Again, that Florida-Louisville season preview video should be coming out shortly, and as long with our top 10 wide receiver rooms in college football. So be on the lookout for that. We are officially a month away from week 1. Super excited for this season. I think a lot could happen. It's a very open college football landscape this year. Super excited for that. And yeah, thank y'all for watching. See y'all.